The town sat in a bowl of red earth, like a wound that refused to heal. Storefronts leaned into each other for comfort, their painted signs bleached to ghosts by a sun that showed no mercy. Horses stood hitched to rails, heads hung low, tails swatting at flies that had nowhere better to be. And at the far end of Main Street, behind a curtain of amber glass and wood smoke, stood the Silver Spur Saloon, the only building in Dry Creek that still pretended to be alive. May Calloway had lived in that building for 3 years. Not because she wanted to. Because one had nothing to do with survival. She was 24, though her eyes carried the quiet exhaustion of a woman who had lived 40. Her hair, the color of dark copper, was pinned beneath a velvet ribbon the same shade of red as old roses. She moved through the saloon like water moves around stone, careful, deliberate, leaving no splash. The men who watched her never saw the calculation behind her smile. They never saw the ledger she kept in her mind, every coin counted, every night tallied against a future she refused to stop believing in. She wasn't selling herself. She was buying time. The thing about Dry Creek in 1887 was that a woman alone had exactly 3 choices: marry into hardship, beg into shame, or work into something worse. May had chosen the third, but she'd chosen it with a plan. Every dollar that crossed her palm went into a flour tin buried beneath the floorboard of her room. She was saving for land. 40 acres east of the Mogollon Rim, where her father had once stood and pointed and said, "That there is God's own country, May. Don't let nobody take that from you." He'd been dead 6 months later. She'd been selling her evenings for 3 years since. Then came the stranger. He rode in on a Tuesday, the sky the color of gunmetal, the kind that warns of storms that never come. He was lean and weathered, with a beard that hadn't been tended in weeks and eyes like still water over dark rock. He called himself Elias Cole. He wore no gun on his hip, which in Dry Creek meant either a fool or a man who didn't need one. He set a leather satchel on the bar, ordered whiskey he didn't drink, and spoke in a low, measured voice that made men lean in closer than they meant to. "I'm looking for someone with courage enough to make a wager on the future," he said. "Not gold. Not land. Something newer than either." Most laughed. May didn't. She watched him from across the room, a tray balanced against her hip, reading him the way a person reads weather. He pulled from the satchel a leather-bound journal filled with diagrams and figures, a ledger for something he called a distributed monetary cipher. The saloon erupted in mockery. But Elias Cole sat still as cathedral stone, unmoved. Later, when the men had gone back to their cards and their noise, May sat across from him in the corner booth. The candle between them threw orange light across both their faces. "You said something newer than gold," she said. "What do you mean by that?" He looked at her the way men rarely looked at women in the Silver Spur, like she was a person worth answering honestly. "I mean a kind of money that can't be taken by a government, can't be burned in a fire, can't be stolen by a man with a badge or a gun," he said. "It lives in numbers, Miss Calloway. In code. And 20 years from now, maybe 30, those numbers will be worth more than everything in this county put together." She studied him. His hands were steady. His eyes didn't waver. She had spent 3 years reading men's intentions. Like a farmer reads sky, she could spot a liar in the first sentence. Elias Cole wasn't lying. He was, she decided, something rarer. A man who believed in something she couldn't yet see. "How much?" she asked. $100 buys you a stake. I hold it in trust in cipher until the system opens." $100. Every coin she'd buried. Every night she'd traded away. Every smile she'd manufactured from grief and held steady like a lamp in wind. She didn't sleep that night. She lay on her back in the dark and stared at the ceiling until the desert outside turned from black to bruised purple, and the first bird started calling out across the hardpan. Then she made her decision. She gave him the money the next morning. All of it. The flour tin emptied into his open hands, like water poured into a new vessel. He gave her a folded paper with a sequence of numbers and letters, 32 characters long, and told her to memorize it, destroy it, and never speak it aloud. "This is your key, May," he said, and it was the first time he'd used her name. "Lose it, you lose everything. Keep it, and everything you've given, every sacrifice you've made in this town, means something more than you can know right now." He rode out that same afternoon, into a sky gone the deep ochre of dying fires. May stood on the porch of the Silver Spur and watched him until the dust swallowed him whole, and the desert gave nothing back. She never saw him again. She repeated the key 30 times every morning for the next 40 years, the way her mother had taught her to say prayers. Numbers and letters, meaningless to everyone on earth except her. Dry Creek. 41 years later. 1928. The town had changed and it hadn't. The Silver Spur was a hardware store now. The old hitching posts were telephone poles. Motorcars coughed and groaned where horses had once stamped patient feet. But the red earth was still the same red earth. The sky was still that impossible blue that made men feel small and grateful and afraid all at once. May Holloway now, these last 15 years, widowed these last 3, sat in a rocking chair on the porch of a modest frame house on Crestline Road. She was 65. Her copper hair had gone silver, but her eyes were exactly as they'd always been. Sharp, patient, a woman who'd learned to wait. Her grandson Thomas sat on the porch steps eating a persimmon and reading a newspaper full of Wall Street catastrophe. The stock market was heaving, men in cities were jumping from buildings, and something ancient and brutal was moving through the financial world like a dust storm across open country. "Grandmama," Thomas said, not looking up from the paper, "weren't you worried? All your savings gone to some stranger on a horse?" She rocked slowly. The desert stretched before her, gold and pink in the afternoon light. "Boy," she said, "I had nothing to lose that I hadn't already lost. And a man who doesn't need a gun is either a fool or a prophet. Elias Cole was never a fool." The letter arrived in October, forwarded 3 times over 20 years through addresses she'd left with a lawyer in Tucson. It bore no return name, only a cipher firm in San Francisco and a single sentence inside. The system opened. "Your key is valid. Present this letter to redeem what was held in trust. A friend of E. Cole." May held the letter in both hands for a long time. The afternoon light moved across the paper. A hawk turned slow circles above the mesa, and somewhere far off a windmill clicked and turned in the dry air. She took the stage to Tucson, then the train to San Francisco, her first time on a train, her first time leaving Arizona territory. The city was gray and enormous and smelled of ocean, which she'd never smelled before and decided she didn't entirely trust. She found the firm on Market Street, a narrow building between a tailor and a telegraph office, run by a young man named Prentice, who wore spectacles and spoke quickly and kept glancing at the letter like it might combust. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "are you aware of the value held under this cipher?" "I gave $100 and a good deal of trust," she said. "I reckon that's all I'm aware of." Prentice removed his spectacles, cleaned them, replaced them, and looked at her with an expression she'd never seen on a financial man's face before. It was something close to reverence. "The cipher network, what Mr. Cole called his distributed monetary system. It grew, ma'am. Slowly at first, then—" He paused, searching for a word large enough. "Well?" He slid a paper across the desk. May looked at the number. She looked at it again. The desert light she'd lived in all her life had taught her to see things clearly at great distance. She'd never once misread what was before her eyes. She read the number 3 times anyway. Then she folded her hands in her lap, looked out the window at the gray San Francisco street, and was quiet for a very long time. Outside, a cable car bell rang once. A gull cried somewhere above the rooftops. The world kept turning the way it always does, completely indifferent to the moments that shatter people open. May Holloway returned to Dry Creek a wealthy woman. Not the kind of wealthy that makes noise, the kind that changes what's possible in absolute silence. She bought the 40 acres east of the Mogollon Rim that her father had pointed to all those years ago. She built a schoolhouse on it, free to every child in the county regardless of station. She funded a well drilling operation that brought fresh water to 4 settlements that had been drinking alkaline runoff for a decade. She never told anyone where the money came from. When Thomas asked, and he asked, often, with a persistence particular to young men, she would only say, "I made a wager on the future. The future paid out." "But how did you know?" he pressed one evening. They were on the porch again. The desert before them, the same as it always was. "How did you trust a man you'd never see again?" May was quiet for a moment. The same hardpan. The same merciless sky. The same red earth that had asked everything from her and given very little back. "I didn't trust the man, boy," she said finally. "I trusted the idea. A man can lie to you. An idea, a true one, just waits. Patient as rock. Patient as this desert. It doesn't care whether you believe in it. It's true whether you do or not." She paused. "And I had spent enough of my life waiting on things that were already true." She rocked forward and stood, slow and certain, with a dignity that had nothing to prove. She walked inside without another word. Thomas sat on the porch steps a long time after that, watching the last light go copper and amber over the mesa, thinking about what it costs to believe in something you cannot yet see. The wind moved through the dry grass with a sound like paper turning. Somewhere out on the hardpan, a coyote called once, long and mournful and free. And the desert kept its silence, the way it always has, the way it always will, holding everything that's ever been given to it, giving nothing back until the time is exactly right. She didn't sell her dignity. She bought the future with it. Thanks for staying to the end. Every good story deserves a witness. Where are you watching from?